Hello, I'm Kamal Santamaria. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and economics. This week, big guns in the United States. It's convention time for the National Rifle Association at a time of huge political division and when military-style firepower is becoming a multi-million-dollar legal growth industry. As gun ownership rises, we'll show you how attempts to rein in gun violence are benefiting the makers of the guns themselves. Also this week, is it a U-turn in the oil market or just a temporary blip? Serious global supply disruptions have wiped 3.8 million barrels a day off the market. Now there's talk that after 2 years of oversupply, we could be shifting to an oil deficit. Plus, mapping the Amazon in the name of conservation. After Ecuador sold more than a third of its rainforest to China for $80 million, an indigenous group is pushing back to save their ecosystem with the use of technology. The US gun industry is one we could look at any time on this program, but with more shootings happening, an election coming up, and the NRA's annual convention taking place, it does seem like an opportune moment. The NRA is the US National Rifle Association, and the convention is both a trade show for shooting and hunting and a massive political and social event. US President Barack Obama's efforts to introduce stricter gun control has had little impact, partly because the NRA uses the billions it receives from gun manufacturers to block legislation. And of course, the more you try to control access to something, the more people seem to want it. We've seen a surge in the number of guns sold. The FBI has conducted more background checks since the system went into place last year. Handgun maker Smith & Wesson rose to its highest value ever after President Obama announced new restrictions back in January. And first quarter profits at Sturm Ruger & Co., the largest publicly traded gun maker, beat all the analyst forecasts. And the result of all this? Well, there are now more guns than people in the United States, an estimated 270 to 310 million of them, which of course means manufacturing is going very well. According to the US Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, 10.9 million guns rolled off the production line in 2013, nearly twice that of 2009. Buying a gun, it's convenient at the least. There are over 50,000 licensed gun retailers in the US. That's more gun shops than McDonald's restaurants. And all of that translates into money, an industry which employs, well, close to 100,000 people and generates roughly $32 billion in revenue every year. But there's a statistic far more costly than any of those: the human cost. Guns kill 33,000 Americans every year and injure another 80,000. We thought, before getting further into the business of guns on this program, we should remind you of just what this massive industry can lead to.
My name is Dolores Franklin. 3 years ago, my son was murdered in Chicago. He was shot 6 times. It was told to me over $100. I mean, it's outrageous. Kids getting killed every day. Every day. You hear about somebody's child getting murdered. I have a close friend's son got killed right down the street from where my son was murdered. Another friend just buried her son about 2 weeks ago. He was murdered. Somebody pulled up and shot him in the head. You got young kids out here raising themselves. They get a gun, they try to prove a point to somebody else, and then they go kill somebody.
But even with stories like that, the gun industry grows and the voices in favour of gun ownership stay just as strong. Let's speak to one such voice. Joining us via Skype from Atlanta, Georgia is Jerry Henry, Executive Director of GeorgiaCarry.org, which advocates for Second Amendment rights in the state. Jerry, I don't want to so much focus on the right to bear arms because that is actually a separate argument. I want to talk to you about the gun industry. Because the thing with any industry is that it needs to give back in some way, be it through employment or taxes, community work, these sorts of things. Can you explain to me the way that the gun industry truly gives back to the United States? Because it's a huge industry and we know all about what it can take away.
It is, and they do it in other ways, just other than what you said. There's a big big group of hunters around here that put millions and millions of dollars into local and state economies by buying license to go out and hunt deer or whatever game they might be hunting. That brings in a tremendous amount of money, and that goes to the Department of Natural Resources in most states to keep our wildlife preserved. We spend more money on that than we do anything else.
So the amount of money that comes in from buying and selling guns, again, I want to get more of an idea of where that actually goes, which means looking at politics and lobbying, and really, is that where the money should be going?
Well, the money that comes in from the gun industry basically is private enterprise. The people who are making the firearms and selling them are making money, as any industry would be doing, as are the dealers, the people that are selling them to the public. It's not just to continue to try to lobby for more gun rights. We lobby for gun rights. GeorgiaCarry.org, for instance, we don't spend any money lobbying for gun rights. We do it with our people to go down and talk to our legislators. And most states do that. There's a misconception that the NRA spends tons and tons of money trying to get politicians to vote their way. They spend money, but it's not necessarily trying to get those votes in that particular way.
No, I guess what I'm saying is that something which has been proven time and time again to cause destruction and take lives, and the money from it then goes into political campaigns.
Well, how about the people who build the munitions for our armed services? They kill a whole lot more people than any private firearms industry does, and yet we go all over the world and do that. And there are people in those industries that are spending a whole lot more money than the private owners of firearms are in this country or any other country.
Jerry Henry talking gun ownership with us on Counting the Cost. Thank you for your time.
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
And from Atlanta, USA, we go to Brighton in the UK to speak to Professor Peter Squires. He's a professor of criminology and public policy at Brighton University. You know, I've read some of your comments previously where you've said, I'm quoting here, the NRA claims to speak for US gun owners, but they speak rather more loudly for the gun industry. Tell me more about that, because on the face of it, the NRA is there for the people and its members to defend their Second Amendment rights. How does it go further than that?
Well, I think the NRA clearly has several million members. I think they suggest some 4 million members, and they service that membership very effectively with a range of publications and a range of, propaganda, as well as sales material. But I think really looking at where the hardcore of the NRA sits, it's a mouthpiece for the gun industry. They have changed fundamentally in recent years. They've become much more political, and they speak to the needs of a gun industry that wants to sell its products. And I think this is one of the factors you can see in the way that the NRA will not discriminate between any types of guns. All guns are good, according to the NRA. And so we've seen this ratcheting up of firepower and killing capacity, from handguns to semi-automatics to assault weapons. The NRA exists to, I think, market a fear which will create a demand for gun purchasing.
So the way you describe it there, it's almost like a giant sales pitch, isn't it? We will create this climate of fear. We will make people want to buy more guns. The gun industry then benefits as a result of that. And then in turn, it is the politicians who benefit because the NRA lobbies them and gives to them.
Yes, it's something like a closed loop. This idea that the NRA is very politically powerful is because of its ability to run a sort of one-issue politics in a number of important swing states, where it puts money into candidates' campaigns, and it selects those states and those constituencies fairly carefully, where it can bring an influence to bear. And I think it's the way also that the NRA has, if you like, insinuated itself into the military-industrial complex, because part of what the NRA is riding on the back of is the gun industry attempts to secure firearm purchasing arrangements with elite military units, elite police units, the FBI and so on. And then that becomes a critical part of the way in which guns are marketed, as used by Navy SEALs, as used by the FBI. And that becomes a powerful selling point. And of course the much larger civilian market wants the best guns that the military can buy. And that's part of the circularity in terms of both firearms marketing, firearms advocacy and firearms politics.
Well, this is the thing, and I'm glad you brought this up actually, because there seems to be a change in the style of weapons that are sold, you know, military grade, semi-automatic weapons. These are now getting into civilian hands, again, because they're being marketed and they're being pushed, and it's sort of like any hint of the whole moral argument of, well, these guns are dangerous and they may well actually take someone's life one day, that seems to pretty much go out the window.
I think to a non-American that is what is most astonishing. No gun is sort of unsuitable. No gun has no civilian potential. And I think you have to think about it, that the kind of market for guns is saturated. Every person that wants a gun probably already has one. So the only mileage for the gun industry, the only mileage for marketing more guns, is to enhance some capacity of that gun. And even tragic events such as Sandy Hook, only really to gun owners, demonstrate how good certain guns are. So the AR-15 assault weapon, which was used to kill 20 children, is demonstrably a good gun because of its rate of fire. The fact that the police and the military use it is another argument. So people want that kind of gun.
Here's my final thought for you, Peter, and it is to play devil's advocate. It is to say that the gun industry is exactly that. It is an industry. It is like pharmaceuticals. It is like soft drinks. It is like fast food, all these sorts of things. It is an industry where money will be spent to promote the industry and to find influence and to lobby as well. Can we ever view the gun industry in such a way?
Well, I think we have to view the gun industry like that, but the gun industry is unusual in the States because it has this civilian lobby working very much on its behalf. There are few lobbies, there are few industries that have such a kind of public mouthpiece. And of course, working that way, it tends to exempt the NRA politically from some of the challenges that it is scaremongering, that it doesn't truly represent even its own members. Most of its own members actually support background checks, but the NRA leadership do not want to see any restrictions on an American right to buy guns, even if that involves arming very dangerous and unsuitable people.
Professor Peter Squires, many thanks for joining us this week. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And still ahead on Counting the Cost, Ivory Coast and the chocolate factory. For the first time, Ivorian chocolate is being made for local consumption and exported elsewhere in Africa. We'll bring you that story a little later on. Right now, though, oil, and forget everything we've been telling you this year about overproduction and falling prices, because apparently the trend is now in reverse. Okay, don't actually forget everything we've told you, because of course oil is very cyclical. But the current cycle has prices heading towards $50 a barrel for the first time this year. That is an 80% rally since prices bottomed out in January. The reason is disruption to supply. Nigeria has fallen to its lowest output level in more than 20 years as violence hits production in the Niger Delta. And of course the wildfires in Canada, an estimated 1.2 million barrels a day went offline as forest fires threatened oil sands production in Alberta. Rob Matheson has this quick look now at how the industry has been affected.
Up to 5,000 workers are based at these oil sands production sites, and they're now in the path of the wildfire. They're owned by the Suncor and Syncrude companies. Many more are at plants nearby. Oil sand produces a thick oil-like substance which needs to be dug out and refined before it can be used in petrol and diesel. Since the blaze started over 2 weeks ago, output is said to have fallen by about a third, or 640,000 barrels a day.
Both Syncrude and Suncor have emergency plans in place, which they are operationalizing, and firefighters in place as well. Officials are confident that should additional trigger lines be crossed, that people can be evacuated safely if necessary.
As workers who actually produce the oil are told to leave, the threat to Canada's oil production becomes greater.
Which brings us back to what happened on the oil markets as a result. Less production, less oversupply, higher prices. It's what Goldman Sachs called in a new report a physical rebalancing of the oil market, and said the market probably entered a deficit in May. Robin Mills is joining us from London to talk about this. He's CEO of Dubai-based Qamar Energy. Look, Robin, this Goldman Sachs report, oil deficit, I can't quite believe I'm saying that really, because on this show all year all we've been saying is oil oversupply. What do you make of this report personally?
Well, you know, Goldman Sachs, they're known for making their somewhat daring claims on oil and being keen to capture the headlines. And we've had a report from BNP Paribas, I think, which just looks at things a bit differently. So there's still a matter of opinion in this. But I think it's clearly true that the oil market, position of the oil market has shifted over the past month or so, mainly due to losses of production from Nigeria in particular, from Canada due to these wildfires, from Venezuela and some other places. And so that's what Goldman were pointing to, their view that the oil market had shifted back into deficit. But we've got to say, is this a temporary thing because of temporary disruptions, or are these disruptions going to be more long-lived, and are we now back into a longer-lived deficit in between supply and demand? Right,
and based on your analysis and your knowledge, which do you believe is it? Is it a blip, or is it the start of something?
Well, I think, the Canadian fires, which have taken out 1 million barrels per day or more, which is, of course, a lot of production, that's a relatively short-lived thing, you would think, and within a few weeks that production should be fully recovered as the fires are brought under control. I'm certainly, for myself, I'm much more concerned about Nigeria, where there is a potential for worse disruptions and continuing instability, and we could see more production lost from Nigeria. But I think, if the Canadian production comes back, Iranian production is still gaining. I think that the initial deficit is really a blip. And of course, we're entering a strong demand period of the year as well, the well-known US summer driving season. Yeah. So into the third quarter, we may again see the market going back into surplus for a while. Certainly, I think by the start of next year, though, we are looking at being in deficit on a more sustained basis and starting to use up these very high inventories of oil that have accumulated over the past 2 years of oversupply.
So as you describe, Robin, all these different scenarios and variables in different countries, I start to think about the big players in all of this, Saudi Arabia and more specifically OPEC. Now, we've got another OPEC meeting coming up in June in Vienna. And, everyone focuses so much on these OPEC meetings when they come along. I'm feeling, though, more that the relevance of these OPEC meetings is really diminishing, and it's actually more about these individual issues which you describe.
Well, I think that's exactly right. We've got the OPEC meeting coming up in June. Of course, the previous OPEC and non-OPEC meeting in Doha in April fell apart without any agreement on freezing production levels. That had been the hope, but I think the Saudi position was that they would not freeze production unless Iran went along with that, and Iran clearly didn't want to sign up to that until they got back to their pre-sanctions levels of production. And I think June will be the same. June is too early for the Iranians to really come with any new proposal or new agreement for a deal. So I don't expect any action in June. Now, by November, the next scheduled OPEC meeting, there might be the conditions for an agreement within OPEC. Iran might be in a position to reach some agreement. But by November, we're expecting the market to be close to balanced, perhaps in deficit. And so then the OPEC agreement to freeze production would be a bit moot at that point. So I think very much I agree with you. These OPEC meetings now, if they'd reached agreement in April, that might have meant something. But now, no, the focus is really on the supply side. These disruptions, are they going to get worse or are they going to ease? And then, of course, also on the other side of the balance on the demand side.
Robin Mills, great to get such a clear explanation for you on this topic. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
To Ecuador now, where not so long ago the government signed contracts with Chinese oil companies to drill deeper into the Amazon rainforest. But what does that mean for the people who call the Amazon home? Well, one tribe in particular is fighting back, with technology actually, as it tries to show the governments and corporations that its own economy is reliant on the forest and its ecosystems. Here's David Mercer's report.
For these Waorani people in Ecuador's Amazon forest, drawing lines on paper isn't just about making maps, it's learning a new skill that could help with their survival. It's the oil line under the jungle soil that's driving them. Living in one of the planet's most diverse rainforests, decades of experience have taught them that the extraction of this sticky black liquid leads to catastrophe.
There were a lot of open pits, and a lot of different animals died. Tapirs, birds, turtles. Then they said the oil was no good, so they left. But now they say they are going to drill again, so they lied. Now we really don't know what's going to happen.
Gregor McLennan says the Waorani are fast learners. Through the non-governmental group Digital Democracy, McLennan is teaching these hunter-gatherers how to use high-tech gadgets like GPS, night vision cameras, computers, and drones.
I think that the difference that technology is making is something like making a map used to be only accessible to a government or a company. And now we have GPSs that cost $75, and they're getting easier and easier to use.
They start with drawings on paper and then move into the forest. The idea is to plan routes, adding more sites via GPS along the way to create living maps, which will challenge the idea that these areas are empty. The hope is that these maps will show oil industry executives and government officials how vast the Waorani's territory actually is, and how interwoven their culture and economy are with the forest around them.
We thought we were going to just one place, but we found a lot of different points along the way. Plants, lagoons, rivers, and now we know this will be true when we plan future routes.
Each point, each GPS coordinate, each video clip and description gets entered into the app and becomes a piece of evidence. The Waorani are no strangers to confrontation. Over hundreds of years, they fought off Spanish conquistadors, rubber tappers, and loggers. These men and women believe that their tenacity, combined with the use of modern tools, will help them win this latest battle.
Finally this week, Ivory Coast, the world's biggest exporter of cocoa beans, which of course makes the chocolate so many of us love. But an actual bar of chocolate brings in a lot more money. So now Ivorians are trying to add value to their most important export by starting the processing at home. Mohamed Ado reports from Abidjan.
Cocoa plantations are everywhere along Ivory Coast's equatorial countryside. Home to more than 35% of the world's cocoa crop, the country is the world's largest cocoa producer. But farming cocoa is tough physical work. Everything is done by hand, yet the farmers say they don't make much from it.
A 100-gram piece of chocolate is more expensive than a whole bag of cocoa. It's the grinders and chocolate factories that get huge profits from our harvests.
Ivory Coast wants to take a bite out of the rich chocolate market by increasing the amount of cocoa processed locally from 30% to 50% within the next 4 years. This is the country's first chocolate factory, opened recently in the commercial capital Abidjan. Here workers turn cocoa beans into a paste used for making chocolates. It's what the government wants to see more of. More local processing equals more opportunities and more money.
The factory has created more jobs. We are just emerging from conflict and the jobs mean a lot. The government wants to ensure that cocoa benefits our people more than ever before.
The factory has the capacity to convert Ivorian cocoa beans into 10,000 tons of chocolate products every year. It's the first step of what the government calls the journey towards becoming the world's biggest grinder of cocoa beans. And there are even bigger dreams.
The government is trying to attract foreign investment in the country's cocoa sector. Our dream is to dominate the global cocoa industry someday soon.
Ivory Coast's first chocolate factory represents a small victory in Africa's battle to profit from its natural resources instead of exporting them for processing elsewhere.
And that is our show for this week, but there's more for you online at aljazeera.com/CTC. That'll take you straight to our page with individual reports, links and entire episodes to catch up on. You can also get in touch with us. You can tweet me at KamalAJE. You can use the hashtag AJCTC when you do, or you can email us countingthecost@aljazeera.net is the address. That is it for this edition of Counting the Cost. I'm Kamal Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. The news on Al Jazeera is next.